yesterday my wife said, "Oh, so what are you speaking about?" And I'm moderating the panel on parenting partnerships. And she sort of looked at me and she said, "Okay, well, make sure they all know how wonderful I am." Okay. All right,
Check.
so, thank you, exactly, exactly. But I've been thinking about that, and it set off a chain of thoughts that aren't new to me, but I think are worth sharing because I do actually care very deeply about this subject, and I thought I would, as the moderator, but also as a parent, I want to sort of share a little bit about why I care so deeply about it, and then then I'll shut up and let everyone else speak. Okay, so I feel that I couldn't have the wonderful life I have as a person who enjoys their job, as a person who loves being a dad, as a person who is very proud and finds much joy and all the other stuff in his relationship without my partner. And I think it was Stu, the professor from Wharton, who mentioned that nowadays maybe 45% of your students are not sure if they're going to be able to be fathers. Is that right? Is that what you said? Was that what you said? Yes. Yes. And I get it. I'm not sure that many of us would have the guts or the sheer material ability to do all the wonderful things that we've heard about today without our partners. So this is a key piece here. And I kind of view this panel a little bit as the reality check panel, right? We've heard all these wonderful things, and there's so much to take away from today. And I love the idea of small experiments, and I encourage everyone. I'm sure everyone was touched by similar things and different things. I encourage you all to at least try and walk away with one thing that will allow you to experiment a little bit if you want that, I will also add before we get into it that I think even if you're a single dad, chances are there are partnerships in the world that you have to negotiate with your ex or your boss or with life. So I'd like to think that this is going to be relevant for you too. Okay, so and I promised to start these things on a fun note, and there you go. I got all serious on you. So on a fun note, here's this book. It's called How to Be a Husband. And what's wonderful, as you can imagine, I get about 1,000 of these kinds of books a year. And what's wonderful about this is it's not at all about how to be a husband. It's just about, it's not a self-help book. It's really about this one very funny writer's describing what his marriage is like. And I've been enjoying it so much. I've been the person on the subway train that everyone's been looking at and saying, "What are you laughing at?" So I guess this is my contribution to the research, all the research you've heard today. If you need a laugh and a relatable laugh about the life that you live, seek this out. Tim Dowling, How to Be a Husband. He's a columnist who writes about his life for The Guardian in London. Okay. So, the people who are going to give us a little bit about their lives and maybe some of a reality check on what we've heard today are sitting next to me are Rob and Carolyn Candelino. Hello. Hello. They have 2 children, 3 and 1. They live on the Upper East Side. They're going to abandon us in the near future for Irvington,
correct,
New York. Okay, and without getting deep into their arrangement, because they're going to do that, Rob works presently, and I think Carolyn is a stay-at-home mom?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Next to them is Matt Schneider and Priyanka Schneider, 2 boys, 9 and 6. Matt, we met earlier. He was one of the co-sponsors today, and he's the co-leader of the New York City Dads Group. and they live down in Battery Park City. And Perlanka is a working mom, and Matt's an at-home dad.
It's like John Travolta announcing, what's her name? Priyanka, like
Okay,
Bianca.
yeah.
I do that.
Call Eric out like that in front of everybody.
Did I get Matt right?
Matt is right. Two teams.
Okay. All right. And then at on my far right are, here comes another one, so forgive me beforehand. Okay, Mark Jarecki?
Jareski.
Jareski.
I told him Jericho.
Yeah,
Okay, Mark.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mark.
And his partner Kip. And they have 2 children, an 8-year-old, and they get the big bonus points today. They have a 3-month-old girl. So thank you so much for being here. All right. Okay, so I thought we're going to sort of do these things. This is like the newlywed game. I'm like couple number 1. Okay. So couple number 1. No. Okay, so we're going to start by, if everyone as a couple or however you want to do it can sort of briefly tell us how you got to the present arrangement. Like, not like how you met and how you fell in love and where you know, and all that, but we assume you fell in love and you kind of had this life. And at what point did you say, okay, this is the arrangement that's right for us as a family, and how did you both feel about that? So why don't you kind of, in terms of working and who's at home, and all, why don't you run with that?
Want to kick it off?
Sure.
I think it's fair to say there was probably no premeditated arrangement, and I don't think the arrangement is settled. I think life intervenes, children intervene. We have a 3.5-year-old in the back, Christopher. I apologize if he's a bit rambunctious, and Julian, who's at home sleeping with his grandmother. I think the reality is we're both Canadian, and I have a job where it's taken me in many parts of the world, and I think landing in the United States in early 2010, we were of the age and of the mindset and the readiness to have children. And so we were fortunate enough. Carolyn got pregnant, Christopher was born, and it just worked for us. I'm lucky enough to have a position financially where we can afford to have mom at home, and then again, we had children back to back. I think the next inevitable question is what the arrangement is going forward, and I think that's a lot of the marital conversation that we now have at our kitchen table. But I think getting to this point was really as much a circumstance of time and fortune, frankly, than it was anything premeditated.
Yeah, I would agree. We're very flexible people as well. I think we just let it roll, and this is where we've gotten to. We do have the serious conversations, don't get me wrong, but we really are flexible and just trying to take it as it comes. It wasn't actually that easy to get pregnant. I had 3 miscarriages before Christopher, so that was a real kind of changed my mindset. I used to be really type A, and then I just started to be a little more flexible, and I think that really helped us get to where we are now, or just taking it as it comes.
Because it was so hard to get pregnant, did that contribute to your feelings about wanting to be at home?
Yes. I'm an occupational therapist, and I do and can work with children, and I just felt, and I'm sure other moms do, working moms do too. I just wanted to be there. I knew what it was to lose it. So for now, I want to stay. And it's not always, I didn't always want to be a stay-at-home mom. So yes, it did change, and I'm sure those circumstances affected my choice to be at home for now.
How about you two?
Go ahead.
This was the question I was most worried about. I'm not sure if we're going to say the same thing and agree.
We'll figure out who's right after.
Yeah. So we met very young in college and started having these conversations actually very, very early on. I was sort of scared of being a parent. I was worried about trying to do it all. We both came from homes where our moms were home, and so I saw my mom doing everything related to parenting, and I didn't want that for myself, and it felt like too much responsibility. So we started having these conversations very early. Matt also his mom was home, and we felt very strongly that we did want an at-home parent. You want somebody who's there and shaping and influencing the children directly. That's what we both wanted, but I also liked my career and wanted to work, and so I think we knew one of us would stay home, and even before we got married, I think both of us would have guessed it would be Matt. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. And then when I got pregnant, Matt was teaching, and he was spending all day parenting 30 sixth graders who were in a very high need situation, didn't have any father figures at home, and Matt was doing a lot for these children, and they needed him. And for me, at that moment, it was like, well, our little baby really needs dad at home. So that's kind of how we got there.
Yeah, and I always say I could never have been the teacher that I want to be and the dad that I want to be. It just wasn't going to work with the life that we wanted to create. And we're also in the fortunate position that the income is coming in, that I can forego that income for now. I think we've also been in a flexible position. We are at the place now where I'll call myself a work-at-home dad. I work most of the day while our 9-year-old and 6-year-old are at school. And it is not on planning recipes for dinner, and it's not on laundry. I get that done too. Most of the dinners on the table are getting less and less, but the laundry always gets done. But it's changed. It does change over time, and I think we're also flexible. I don't know that you'd ever want to be an at-home parent, but you would appreciate the opportunity to spend more time with the kids if the roles were reversed.
Matt, were you the kid in college who would have filled out the form that said, my dream job would be an at-home dad?
No.
Or did this sort of whole idea kind of come to you in your relationship as an adult? I
think if you talk to my friends, nobody would be surprised that this is what I'm doing right now. But I went to Wharton. I went to the Wharton School of Finance. I was the one that had the poster with the house on the cliff with the Porsche in one garage, the big SUV in another, and that's the culture that I kind of was in college, and I planned on pursue. I had a great career before teaching. I was in telecom. I was took the ride of the internet and telecom boom. And I loved that, but I came to a point when we got married and we moved to New York City, Priyanka, in a job that could sustain us, that I had an opportunity to do something different. So that first stop into teaching kind of gave me an entirely different mindset on the world and where I wanted to be and what I wanted to be doing, and that opened up the door for me to change roles again and be home with our kids for the last almost 10 years.
Gentlemen?
So I would say, actually, let me back up. So Mark and I were set up on a blind date in grad school. And on our very first date, we both talked about how we wanted a family one day. We both come from pretty large families. But I think from a practical standpoint, we didn't really think, I don't think we understood how it would play out, because as much as we tried, we can't make our own baby. So we had to adopt our babies. I mean, for me, it's funny that you asked Matt about the question, if you had a survey in college, would you be a stay-at-home dad? I mean, that would be me. My goal in life, and to this day, is to be a stay-at-home dad. But from a practical matter, we both have to work. We lived in New York for a long time, and so it's just the economics of it required us both to work. And so when we adopted we waited, or we didn't wait. It took us 12 and a half years of being together before we adopted our first child, which was fantastic. But we both worked full time, both outside of the home and at the home. And then our son is now 8, and we recently just adopted our second child, who's going to be 3 months next week. And the second one is much easier. And so for me, we've both worked full time, and I've had the good fortune over the past 2 years of having a job where I telecommute half the time, and then the other half of the time I commute to Canada, because my company is based in Canada. This was obviously before the baby came, so I was able to spend a lot of time at home with my family, so the laundry always got done, and I actually did a lot of meal planning. And my job is my company was acquired, so I'm in the process of winding down that job. So for the first time ever, since we've had had children, I get to stay at home. So it'll be an interesting change for me.
I would add to that we've been together over 20 years. And so in 20 years, there's a lot of different types of roles that get played. There's a lot of different kinds of jobs. And so there's been a lot of change in terms of what kind of careers we had and how we changed them. And also, we've had the same nanny for 8 years. So we have, I feel like we have a support system at home that lets us do the kinds of things that we need to do to bring money in, but also make sure that we have our family taken care of. So that's been important to us.
Yeah, I mean, it takes the village people to raise our children, so.
Do you have their phone number for the rest of us?
We have
So,
cops.
okay. All right, so thank you. Topic, first big theme, chores versus big responsibilities. I would love all of you to share a little bit and try and be as specific as possible about some of the sort of touch points about how this works. And the biases I'm coming to this question with is, I kind of assume that in the case of at-home parents, because they're at home, they're obviously making a lot of the minute-to-minute, decisions that need to be made when you're raising children. And I'm curious if, because they are the hands-on parent most of the time, in your relationships, does that mean they're also kind of get a little more kind of cred in making some of the bigger decisions, like school decisions or behavioral issues? Or do you as a couple try and kind of work on these things together? And with the two working parents, it would be great if you can share how you divide it all, whether you have a sort of theoretical 50-50 on almost everything, or is it, do you play to each other's strengths and, kind of figure it out? So since we went this way last time, why don't we go this way? So chores versus big responsibilities and kind of how that all.
I mean, I'll start by saying that I have my own company, so I can I go to work every day, but I can go in late and come home early. So I'm not that dad that gets home at 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock at night. Like I get home at 6 o'clock, so I think that's a luxury for me at least. I get to see my son in the morning. I get to see him when I get home. But I think we talk about everything. So there's not like in terms of discipline or any kind of behavioral things that we don't not have a discussion about it. And if Kip's at home and something happens, of course he can make whatever kind of decision he feels he needs to make in the moment. But we talk about everything. So it's not like there's anything that's a surprise in terms of decisions that we've made. But I think that we've known each other for so long that kind of philosophically we're aligned. So it's not like anything surprises us in terms of decisions.
But a lot of couples have, a really, it's a challenge to figure out, well, who's going to cook tonight, and okay, it's Saturday, I want to rest. You take the kids,
Yeah.
Do you guys have like set routines, or is it 50-50?
So, I mean, we met each other basically when we were starving grad students, and I think that, it's interesting because I think the older we've got, the more like we've got too, like in terms of our perspective on things. I don't believe that there's ever such a thing as 50-50, and I'm totally okay with that. My mother actually gave me a really good piece of advice, which is if you're looking for your spouse to change, you've picked the wrong spouse. Because the reason why we're together is because I love the things that he does things that I can't do, and nor do I want to do. And I hope vice versa as well. But I think your question is just from a practical standpoint, how do we play out our day? I mean, I readily admit I'm a bit of a control freak, so laundry gets done in a certain way because I'm going to do it. I will do the meal planning and I do the cooking because I like to do it. Mark is welcome to do it, but I don't think I've ever had that expectation. I mean, in the 20 plus years we've been together, so.
I've cooked like 3 times probably.
Yeah, and he's a messy, he's a good cook, but a messy cook, so it ruins my kitchen plan. But I mean, I think that in terms of the big issues, we're because of the fact that we're two guys, we don't get, I don't know if this is fair to say, but we're not falling on sort of gender roles about either discipline or care. So we're required to kind of constantly negotiate that stuff. And I think that if Mark was more inclined to cook, I wouldn't readily give that up because I prefer to cook myself. But so we're definitely playing to our strengths. And it's a negotiation. It's taken us, certainly 8 years of having our son, but there were years before that. I remember one day, 5 or 6 years into our relationship, where I think I turned over and I said, "You're never going to do laundry, are you?" And I think he was like, "Yeah, probably not." And I said, "Okay, fine." And that's just how it's been. So
In the working world, that's called managing your expectations.
that's totally right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Matt?
And I think we have kind of thrown all those gender expectations out the window. Also, me being at home, I think at some point we talked about the fact that we could do things like laundry on the weekend, but that's not how I want to spend my weekends. I don't want to be checking off chores. I want to have all that stuff done so we can really enjoy our time together. I don't particularly enjoy laundry. I do enjoy cooking, but I don't enjoy cooking for a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, so that's become unpleasant, but I'm home to do it, and I'm the one that's going to be doing that. So I think the circumstance of the choice that we've made have led a lot of the chore type things to work themselves out. But the big decisions, there's not a big decision, or very few small decisions even, that we don't make together. We always joke, or people ask us about money, and can I go out and buy a TV if I wanted to? And I'm like, why would I go out and buy a TV without talking about it and how it fits in our home and how it fits in our budget? It just doesn't make sense in the way that we live our lives, that we wouldn't make these decisions together.
Yeah, I would say, though, that I think in the realm of school and education, because Matt comes from an educator's background, and he's around more. I mean, he was president of the PTA for 2 years. He sees what the kids come home with, and he interacts with teachers more. I think that's an arena where we basically do default to generally what Matt's thinking or what his views are, what his suggestions are. Like, we're starting to think about middle school, what are those options? And I have very little to provide or to add to the conversation. So we will certainly talk about it, but it's almost more like he's sort of saying, here's what we should do, and I'm saying, okay. Right?
Well, that's not what I heard. Okay, so, but let's sort of play into gender stereotypes for a second. Just humor me.
Yeah.
You probably he's the at-home parent, you're at work all day, you probably have your own thoughts about how you might handle certain situations during the day if you were there. So what's the deal? Do you kind of consult him, or do you just say, Matt's running the show, I'm not going to second guess him?
So that's
I'm
been
looking forward to this answer.
it's been a it's been a 9-year
coming for you too,
progression. That was hard because there are certain ways that I would do the laundry. There are certain ways that I would ask our children about what happened at school during the day. And if I had from 3 p.m. to bedtime to have that conversation versus from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. when I'm trying to get all the information out of them, it would be I would just do it in a very, very different way. But I don't like my boss at work second guessing my work. I don't like anybody second guessing my work. So I've sort of learned over this 9-year process that I'm not going to second guess what's happening at home because I'm not there. I'm not there to kind of see what happens from 3 p.m. till dinner time. I can't imagine the frenzy of getting homework done and everything else. And how do you have what in my mind is this ideal conversation of let's sit and have milk and cookies and talk about your day. I know it's not how it works. So I've let go of a lot of that.
But you're not detached, and I think you are
No, I'm not.
completely engaged with what the kids are doing. You do come home and spend that time from 7 to 8 p.m. Learning about their teachers, figuring out what they're doing on their homework and stuff. And I think sometimes that license I don't know anything about school, so I'm not going to get involved in even thinking about it, can be a road that dads sometimes travel. Well, she's got that taken care of, I don't need to worry about it. you don't want to have too many of those things that one of you is the expert, the decision maker, and gives license to the other person to not be involved. And I mean, it's a real struggle. Like, we definitely do have things that I do differently than Priyanka would, and that's an ongoing part of our partnership is being open to those conversations, and those conversations happen daily.
But isn't, one of the big themes that we're trying to kind of explore today in all the panels is this idea of fathers, claiming their stake in the parenting of their child. And I think it was Michael who said, fathers are fathers and mothers are mothers, but everyone's a nurturer. So does that resonate with you?
It does. I mean, I think that's the kind of stuff that it's a given that we're both going to be nurturing, that we're both going to love our children, care for our children, be able to take care of our children, be able to do the laundry, be able to make them dinner. Both of us are capable of all of that. And the partnership part comes in when we are figuring out how to do some of those things. But that, to me, that's not parenting. That's discussing things between us. But we're both really active in those conversations. And the school issue, because I was a teacher, is to me one area where I might have expertise, but it's not an area that I make the decision by myself.
After that plug, I think you should open up a consultancy.
Just move to no more Irvington. I don't even know where Irvington is. Battery Park City. It's a beautiful place to live.
So how about couple number one? Tell us a little bit about, how power is shared in terms of parenting.
There was a power struggle for a few years. That took a little bit to get through. We're Italian, born and raised, first generation Canadian. We are sort of that stereotype. He's the guy going to work. I'm the woman staying at home with the kids. However, I think that I feel that I know that you are so much more involved as a father with our children than your father was, his father was. I think you're more aware, you're more educated, you participate more than I actually thought that you would. I think that you make a really big effort, and although you are so motivated at work, and that is something that you're so passionate about, I do think that you spend more passion at home when you're with the children, and that is, I think if you looked back at Rob's yearbook, I don't think people would have believed that now.
Thank you. I think on the surface, I suppose it is fair to say we fall down traditional gender roles, as Carolyn said. I think the behaviors are probably much more 21st century. I'm up early. I get up with the kids. I'll feed them breakfast. Try not to get them to watch TV. Play the games. Change the diapers. I'll do all that stuff. I try to let Carolyn sleep. I wake up. The transition, the proverbial baton passing. I go get ready and I go to work. I leave work early. I come home. I leave for work early.
Leave work early? What?
I leave for work early.
Right.
I get home
Rewind.
late. Full disclosure, I work with Dove Men Plus Care and a number of other brands. I've got a big job and it's a time-consuming job for which we manage. We muddle through. Right. And I try to race to get home to at least put Christopher to sleep. And weekends, they're all about the kids. Mm-hmm. There is a sacrifice in all this, and I think it was documented today, and I think we all know that, right? The sacrifice that I've consciously made is time for myself. I don't think I have a litany of friends in New York City. I have colleagues, and I have friends through kids. And to be honest, I wouldn't have it any other way. The sacrifice.
10 years, but before Christopher and Julian, you would have had it another
Exactly,
way.
Yeah. And I think, you make trade-offs in life, and as something profoundly inserts itself at the top of your priority list in life, the birth of a child and a second child, they're concentrated within 2 years of one another, and you're full on with a full on job and a wife, you know, who's at home managing it all, who has a phenomenally more difficult job than I, you know, you have no choice. So the trade-off was rather easy for me to make. Will that change? Probably, you know, and as Carolyn said, we tend to roll with these things, but I think on balance, you know, you make it work. And I think the kids see that, right? It's the time and the passion and the energy you put into the time you have with them.
Right.
It's not a quantitative measure, it's a qualitative one.
Does, do you defer to her judgment sort of day in, day out on stuff?
Yeah,
Or are you in a,
I think
That's starting.
Yeah, I think if you were to ask Carolyn, you know, one of the criticisms, if you would, about our relationship, and we don't argue, right? One of the things I'm most proud of is we don't argue. We really don't. A handful of times. We knit and nat, but on balance, you know, we've known each other 26 years, and you know, I can count on hands how many times we've actually had a full-on argument. But one of the things is probably communication.
That's true.
I will defer, right? If I've made the right decision, and I'm every bit of my fiber believes I have, and you see your kids prospering, 99% of the time she's going to get it right. And God, there's no way I'm going to tell her about the 1%, right? Now, if there's a big decision to be made, she will do. She always does. She'll call me. Now, I think the interesting thing will be I'll make a call. It's just how I'm programmed. I run a big business. I make decisions.
Yeah.
I like to make decisions,
Right.
and I'll make a call.
That's something that we're struggling with.
And you know, to be honest, I like to make decisions. If you involve me in it, I'm going to take a position.
Yeah.
Right?
You
If you
take that
don't involve me,
position
then I
right
trust you
away.
implicitly. Then I trust you implicitly. And I, you know,
But then when I want to, then the issue is when I try to say, okay, well, do you think, Kara, you called me, you asked me for the decision, I made the decision. Like, oh, right. So that is one thing we are progressing in very nicely.
are you glad that you decided to do this panel? Okay. He's sponsoring this event. We have a lot to thank you for, really. Okay, so that was fun. Okay, I want to, you know, we're going to run out of time before you know it. So I want to ask a really hot button question. And I got this one in part with Matt's advice, so I'm going to blame him. Let's talk about money. Okay, let's talk about money. And of course, that's a great metaphor for, you know, if anything, how one negotiates important things. So, working parent. Let's start with the working parents, the couples with someone at home and someone at work. Did you come into this with a prenup? And if not, is everyone's money, you know, everyone's money? Is there, for the at-home, does the at-home parent have a budget that they don't have to, in which it's built in, they don't have to justify to the working parent and vice versa? Matt, why don't we start with you two and tell us a little bit about how money is thought of in the relationship and raising a family.
I love this question. I heard this question on at a conference I was at, and I just was shocked by, and this is going to sound very judgmental, I was shocked by the idea that people think about their money and compartmentalize their money based on who brought that money in the door, because we've always very much looked at our life as a whole. And we said, when we were both working before we had kids, this is our money. This is where we want to live in New York City. This is the apartment that we're going to have. Priyanka's always made more than I have. Her choices at Wharton were better than mine from a breadwinning standpoint. But it was, we're looking at a whole life, and we're making decisions based on the resources that we have, the time that we have, the energy we have, the interests we have. And we've never looked at money as Priyanka's the breadwinner, so she's the decision maker around money. I need to get permission to buy the arugula versus the kale because kale's more. I mean, it wouldn't even cross my mind. But for so many people, this actually becomes a power dynamic where that's his money or her money because she brought it in the door, and it just never worked like that for us.
Yeah, there was no prenup, certainly. We've always had one bank account, all that stuff. But also, you know, when we made the decision for Matt to stay home, I very consciously, at that point, made sure to change my language choices, like our paycheck, our bonus was, our, and because it is ours. I can't do it without him, certainly. So it's, it's very shared.
How about you two?
Ours was definitely an evolution. We have come to this now. That has probably been in the last maybe 3 years, 2 or 3 years, I think, that we've been, no, maybe longer. But in the beginning, because we kind of roll with it, I think we sort of forgot to talk about, we didn't forget, but we just didn't really talk that much about money and how we were going to do it. And I had one idea, he had a different idea. I was also working, but when I was working and you were working, they were sort of separate, and it just didn't really gel. It felt like there was something missing. And now that, speaking to Matt's point, that we are a whole unit, it is so much more, it's so much easier. The power struggle is gone, there's more freedom, we trust each other, we do not have a prenup, and I probably spend most of the money, but, and on big decisions, we decide together, but generally speaking, no, it's just working, but it is definitely was an evolution.
Kids changed it, right? I think you can operate in your own capacity, and you don't. There's no need to have the conversation. Truthfully, if you're a married couple without kids, truthfully, right? She was doing well, I was doing well. It was fine, and money wasn't an object. We were young, we didn't care. I think you have a couple of kids, you start getting settled, you look to buy a new home, which we've just done. Suddenly, you're a grown-up, and so you have those conversations. And I think there's one income, bigger commitments. You have kids to think about. College education in this country is not cheap. Healthcare, et cetera. So you start it forces you to have those conversations. But I think the lax in having this conversation wasn't any deliberate kind of ignorance or shyness to have the conversation or to engage. It was just we didn't need to have it.
It was just,
Does every couple have a will?
Yes.
Because I have found that to be a very interesting, well, not only necessary, but exploratory experience, because you have to make choices about, well, if we both pass away, all these tough things that really sort of speak to your values as a couple. Just if you don't have a will, just putting a plug out there for wills.
Life insurance was an interesting topic.
Same.
I don't have an income. Haven't had an income for 10 years. Do we get life insurance for me? Usually people think about life insurance as replacing that income that they're going to use to take care of their families. But our lives would change dramatically if I passed away and we had to hire help, we had to spend money in a different way. So that was an interesting conversation.
How do you negotiate money?
So we don't have a prenup because we've been living in sin for the past 20 years. Sorry. So Mark and I met when we were both young, starving students in New York. And so what we brought to the table was nothing. So we were scraping together our quarters to buy falafel for dinner, right? So over time, as we moved to New York to become artists, and then we woke up one day and we were yuppies, and we thought, what are we going to do? But very early on in our relationship, we had determined that we wanted to own a house and have health care and have a family, and that requires some planning, and I like to plan. And so I remember really early on saying, hey, let's combine our all of our finances, which we did. And as a not married couple, it's much more complicated because we have to get stuff signed and accountants and all of these things. And and just as a side note, I actually took Mark's name for the sake of our children, because I wanted our children to I wanted the same last name of our children, and that required a lot of time and attorneys and money. We're actually doing everything backwards because we'll probably get married, in 10 years. But so I think we've always considered it just one joint pool. Sometimes there have been years where Mark makes more money than me and years where I make more money than him, but generally it's been pretty much on par. When we were early in our relationship, I think I made this request that there was a certain threshold, like, you know, at one point it was like, if it's more than $100, just let me know so I can balance the checkbook. If it's more than 200, if it's more than 500. And so you get to the point where you're like, okay, well, I know he's not gonna buy some crazy thing. There's an episode of Portlandia where the woman was making more money and the man was not, and she makes this commitment for them to join the bank accounts, and the banker's like, God, you shouldn't do this, it's a terrible idea. She's like, no, I trust him. And the first day that he has the bank account, he buys a hot tub. And she's like, what are you doing? You're ruining my, and he's like, no, it's great. And she finally's like, oh yeah, this is actually kind of great. So early on, I think I would have been that person to buy the hot tub, but fortunately we didn't, and I think we've done okay.
I don't have anything to add.
So no hot tub?
No hot tub.
Oh, man. All right. We're going to run out of time, and I have all these great questions, so I'm going to kind of combine two, and then we'll put it out to the audience. I'm not sure why, because I'm not a sociologist, and maybe Michael Kimmel I should have sought out his advice, but before over the last few days, I asked everyone to make a short list of, and not share them, of two things they really are deeply proud and like about their parenting partnership, and two things they were not as thrilled with, right? And everyone do their homework?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I also told you that I would ask everyone to share with the audience a little bit about how you negotiate your differences and your disagreements, you know, how you play well in the sandbox, basically, or not. So let's start with B. Let's find out how you play well together, and then we'll actually discover the things you like and things. Okay, so let's go this way. So first, how do you negotiate? How do you bridge your differences?
Yeah, so I'm going to be respectful of the questions and probably morph between them because
Fine.
I think they're interdependent, at least for me. The two things I'm most proud of, the first is that we don't really fight. I mentioned that earlier. You know, I grew up in a home where my alarm clock every morning was my parents arguing. So we don't do that, which is awesome. And the second is, you know, in life, in business, on any team sport, who you compete against in business or whatever, you want to compete against, you want to work with, you want to recruit, you want to hang out with people who are better than you. And that's what I've done. Wow. So, totally, outkick my coverage, as they say, right? And I think that when it comes to parenting, that's profoundly important, right? So I think consciously or unconsciously, it just happened, and you know that's why I do defer to decision. That's why we've had such unbelievable success with our kids, and that's why I've been able to have the career that I've had. It's 1,000% because of the foundation I have at home, and that's entirely Carolyn's doing. Do we talk enough? Openly, like talk? Probably not. That's one of the blemishes. And are we organized enough at home? No, because we still probably act like college kids, if I'm really honest. Because we roll, and our apartment is, we have a big, beautiful apartment, and it's a disaster all the time. Not as messy as she always says it is, but it's still a mess and everything else. And I think that's why, to the question, how do we resolve these things? I'm a work in process. So I'm not there yet, and I think we're not the finished article. Clearly, her approach to it is far more mature than mine, but clearly we haven't found, in my view, the right narrative, or the right tone between us, because I tend to be, I'm fine, until it becomes an issue, and then it's like, okay, here's what we're gonna do, and actually, that's not how a proper, healthy conversation should run, and I'm conscious of that, and it's, as I said, it's a work in process.
Well, thank you for sharing. Everyone's, I'm going to speak for everyone. Everyone's dark secret is that life is pretty messy, just so you know.
Yeah.
We all have these, it's a really hard to, unless you have the anal approach to, having kids is a messy,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a messy exploration. It's a messy journey.
And I say this all the time to new parents and even other, parenting is really, really hard. Good parenting is phenomenally difficult, right? It just takes so much more to be great. And that's why when you partner with somebody who is better than you at the craft, right, you inevitably get better through osmosis, through whatever. And like at work, you know, I'm inspired by people who are smarter than me. And at home, you know, it's just same as it is at work.
Well, thank you. I don't agree. I think the same of you. But anyway, we can debate that later. I wrote down that I am proud of our time management. I think we do fairly well with managing our time. I'm not sure if that has to do with the fact that I'm in OT and I do really like things a certain way. But I also think I'm most proud is that we keep love and kindness a priority above all else. We keep faith in our home. We really, when it comes down to something's happening with the children and I'm intervening and then Rob's intervening and then he and I disagree and we start arguing, we are ignoring the children at this point and we're talking, one of us generally stops and says, okay, it's not about you, it's not about me, it's about them. We need to either step away for a minute, figure out what we're going to do, and then come back to it, because that's when the power struggle comes in, and it's of no benefit whatsoever to the children, none. So I'm really proud that we're doing that. Things we can improve on. I wrote down sleep habits. I wrote down I'd love to stop someone from snoring.
Wow.
Because that might help me sleep a little more. I think I wrote that because I don't have. My second one is.
I sleep fine.
Yeah. Well, that was my improvement. It's not about us. It's about the children.
Yeah.
And one more thing that I'm a little choosy. However, sometimes when you come home from work and you haven't had a workout, and you're kind of in that work mode, I often say to you, I'm not your assistant, or I'm not your colleague, I'm your wife, I'm the parent. So that's something we're working on too, is that I need to decompress before you come so that I'm not attacking you, and you are working on not remembering that I'm the wife and the mom, not your colleague. Although, I mean, I would love to be your colleague, but in those situations.
It can be hard to transition sometimes.
Right.
Just in terms of timing,
Yeah.
I will
Sorry.
request succinctness.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. How do we resolve conflict or argue? I mean, so one of the things that I wrote down that we do really well is fight. We fight well. Like, we don't, there's like no, we're not ugly fighters. We get everything out quickly. We share. I mean, we argue all the time. We were out to dinner with friends last night. I don't even remember what the topic was, but we sort of had like, no, you're wrong. No, you're wrong. You know, like right in front of people. Like, we get it all out, which I think has been one of the huge.
What does
keys to
arguing
success.
well mean? I mean, really, what does it mean to you?
It means that we say what we really mean. Like, we're not,
You're not derogatory to each other?
It's
or
not
something?
personal. It's not a personal
Okay.
attack. It's not you are this. It is
You're an idiot.
this
Right.
is the problem. I mean, it's real. We have a real fight, but it doesn't become a personal attack.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
respect.
What's that?
There's respect.
Oh, absolutely. Always respect, but also a need for me to get out what I'm thinking or what I disagree with, and he's the same. So that's one of the things that I think as well in terms of our partnership. The other thing that, and I always have this moment every weekday morning, I think our morning routine is awesome. Like, we both stand there, we both make the lunches together, we get breakfast on the table for all four of us, we get the dishwasher loaded and emptied, whatever. And that's always every morning. I think, gosh, this is working really well.
Very nice.
The things that we need to work on from my perspective. This is a progression as our kids get older. I'd like to be more thoughtful about our approach to helping them with homework. Do we want to help them with homework? Do we want them to develop a love for learning on their own? I don't know what the right answer is, but I don't think we've yet kind of had that proactive conversation. We've been sort of reactive to that, so that's one thing I'd like to work on. And then the other thing I wrote was we have too much of a defined division of labor, which has sort of just happened over the years, and I'd like to revisit that.
These are really good.
I think we fight, and we fight often, and again, I think it's about getting it out. There's nothing that festers. There's no hard feelings held. There's nothing we're holding on to, and I think that is a huge benefit for us. It works for us. We and our kids see it. Our kids, we fight in front of our kids. They see us fight. They see the problem. They see us fight. They see the resolution. And it's
I mean,
not,
we're using fight like, I mean, conflict resolution, whatever the nice word is you want to use, but we're disagreeing.
In terms of the things that I think I'm proud of, we as a family really enjoy spending time together. And we have a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, and the 9-year-old may be on the edges of still enjoying time with us, but I think we have a few more years. But we enjoy time together. We spent all of last weekend together from Friday evening through Monday evening. Every waking minute we were all together, and we thoroughly enjoyed ourselves all weekend. And the two of us as well, we enjoy time together. We have date night every night. Like our life is getting everything done, and finally we're sitting on the couch at the end of the night with our glass of wine ready to watch Homeland, is what we're watching now. In terms of things to work on, Priyanka gets home very late. Dinner comes up again. I cook dinner for the boys, and then on a good day I cook dinner for the boys, and then I cook dinner for us. We always eat together. And I hate that. I want to get to a point where I can cook dinner for our family. Even if we don't sit down together, I want us to all eat the same food. So 9-year-old and 6-year-old don't like all of the same foods, unfortunately. And I think the big thing for me is gatekeeping. And you hear gatekeeping from a mom's, often referred to moms keeping their partners, their husbands, boyfriends, whoever, out of the parenting equation. I'm the one home all day. I made a decision, I make decisions every day, and I can be very judgmental about those decisions, Priyanka not kind of following my lead and doing things the way that she knows I would do them. And I learned a long time ago that she is a great mom, she continues to be a great mom, and she needs to do things the way that she wants to do in order for the boys to see her as the great mom that she is.
Thank you. So I don't think we fight very much. We've had 20 years of practice sort of working through our fighting. So at this point, maybe we fight once a year, and we do it via shorthand, like that thing from '92. Then you sort of, and I think the resolution more often than not is because Mark is a very forgiving, generous person, much more so than I am. So I'm lucky that way. In terms of what I'm proud of, I would say, and I'm not even sure if proud is the right word, I'm happy that after our first conversation about wanting to have a family, we actually have a family. Having a family was, a hard process for us. It's not as if, I like to joke that we got drunk at a bar and then 12 and a half years later we had accidentally adopted a baby, but it's much more complicated than that, and we learned that with the second kid as well, because that was complicated. And the second thing I'm really happy about in terms of our parenting partnership is we very much want to raise our kids through a sense of joy and happiness and intelligence, and that's important to the both of us. So that's how I think we view how we're parenting our children. I don't know, this is going to be a cop-out, but as far as parenting goes, I feel very much on the same page with Mark. If there are things that I want to improve, it's not necessarily about our parenting approach, but maybe that we need to be able to spend more quality time as a couple separate from being dads, because our whole lives are devoted to our children, and we have to sacrifice kind of everything else. We make sacrifices for our jobs, with our friendships, with all of these other things. But we're kind of in that phase, and we're kind of in that mode, and I'm thrilled to be in that mode because I know it doesn't last long. So,
the thing I'm happy about or proud about, I say, so we didn't make our kids; they're not biological kids. So when we look at our kids, we don't see ourselves. We see this person that we have to think about. We were very thoughtful of the fact that this person is not us. This person is not my genetic history. It's not my family in that kind of genetic sense. So I feel like we do a really good job of looking at these kids and getting an understanding of who they are as they grow up, as opposed to kind of putting on them some kind of idea of what we think they are as our family. And I think that we are constantly investigating who these people are that are our family. I think that's really nice. And then I think that I tend to be the bad cop, So I'm the guy that has to like reinforce rules. So I think we can do a better job of like when the rules get broken, like
I would just add
Yeah.
that Mark is the bad cop, but he's also the hugs and kisses dad, because
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah.
You know, I'm the executor, I do the practical things, but when the kids are hurt, they don't go to me, they go to Mark.
Yeah.
But they also have fun with Mark. But if they need a hot meal, they come to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the thing I'm most very proud of right this second is this panel. This was great. I didn't know what we were going to get, and I didn't even know whether I should ask you to share your, the things that you don't love as much as the things you love. But I did, and you did, and I think we all gained from that, didn't we? Just hearing a little bit of the reality after all, some of the research and some of the theories. So should we take questions, or we wrap it up? Okay, 2 really good questions. Okay. Does anyone have a question? Does anyone have a question for any other experts I didn't get a chance to say today that you want to ask? So I think we're good. So thank you, guys. That was great.